Once it's green, you're good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this Planning Corporate Services meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order 5 o'clock on August 14th, 2023. We'll have our roll call, beginning with Deputy Mayor Clark,
Present.
Councillor Blackwell,
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger,
Present.
Councillor Kennedy, not here. Councillor Prenger,
Present.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray,
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
I'd like to acknowledge our staff members here. Thank you for being here, and several members of the public in the hall as well. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Thank you for that. Do council members have any amendments, additions, or deletions to the proposed agenda? If you have any disclosure of pecuniary interest, you are asked to do so now or when it arises during the agenda. And now we have a motion from the clerk to go into our public meeting.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that council move into public meeting and upon completion return to council.
All in favor?
Yes.
And that's carried. All right, so welcome to the public meeting. The Council of the Corporation at 5:02. And roll call remains the same. Wondering if there are any amendments, additions, or deletions to the agenda. Once again, remind you to disclose your pecuniary interest now or as it arises. And this evening we have zoning application from Aaron Walter and Dan Hunter, 1178 Queen Street. And I would call on Karina Smith to explain the report, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you through you, Mayor. I am presenting on behalf of one of my colleagues this evening for the zoning bylaw amendment on Queen Street. The application is seeking to facilitate a severance of the land to allow for 2 severed parcels and 1 retained parcel, and that would be all for residential purposes. The zoning bylaw amendment is specifically looking to rezone one of the lots to allow for a reduced lot frontage, and also to implement some of the recommendations from the environmental impact study that the applicants had asked for a consultant to prepare on their behalf. I did want to make one correction to the report. It is noted in the report that there is a woodland on the property. I wanted to correct that it's not a significant woodland. It doesn't meet the criteria for significant under the current policies, but it is a woodland and does have species that do utilize that. And so the recommendations of the environmental impact study do provide mitigation recommendations that will be implemented through the zoning bylaw amendment application and through conditions on the related severance applications, which will be considered by the county at a later date. That concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Just one little comment before we continue. On the back of the hall, on the table at the back, there is sign-in sheets. If there is anyone here specifically for either the Hunter or the Stewart application, please sign those sheets. They offer staff opportunity to make sure that you are completely apprised of the information as we move forward in the applications. Does the applicant, Mr. Hunter, is here? Is there anything that you would like to add to the report, Mr. Hunter?
No, thanks.
Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Okay, seeing none. Questions and clarifications from council. Any questions regarding this application? Okay, so no questions. All right. There will be no decision rendered at this time. Council will consider the application at the regular meeting, which will be following this. So when we get back into our planning corporate services meeting, our corporate services meeting, we will address the motion then, but there seems to be no objection to the application at this time. Next applicant is Kevin and Joanne Stewart, 5772 Highway 9. Once again, we call on our planner, Karina Smith, to explain the report, please.
Yes, thank you again through you, Mayor. So I'm presenting on a zoning bylaw amendment application, and this one is also to facilitate a severance. In this case, it's a surplus farm dwelling severance from an agricultural parcel at 5772 Highway 9. The applicant has met all the criteria from the provincial policy statement as well as county and local policy with respect to that severance. And we are recommending that that bylaw amendment be approved. The one thing I did want to highlight in the zoning bylaw amendment is a special provision relating to holding for archaeological potential. We've identified it as an H1 holding. We're intending to use that for this parcel for the portion of the land that is subject to high archaeological potential. And what that means essentially is that if there is ever a proposal to build in that location, an archaeological assessment would need to be completed. But in this case, the applicant is not looking to build there. And so that holding will remain in place until they are looking to do so, if at all in the future. but we are looking to use that H1 holding provision in the future moving forward as well. It will just eliminate the bulk of the bylaw by adding special provisions going forward. And instead, we can just refer to this H1 provision for any application that requires that holding. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So just to confirm with anyone watching the proceedings this evening, council has been given several pages of background information. It's not as though our planner shows up and says, by the way, here's 2 minutes worth of planning advice. Council has had opportunity to dive into the meat and potatoes of this. So we do thank you for providing that and allowing us to ask the questions that are important to us. Once again, are there any comments from the applicant regarding this application? No, we're good. Are there any members of public who have any comments regarding this application? Are there any members of the public that have comments regarding this application? Seeing none, I'll ask council if there are any questions or clarifications regarding the application. Councillor Stewart, please.
I noticed they have a fine last name named Stewart. I just want to make sure I am not related to this Stewart, but that's a fine name. Thank you.
I don't think you'd need to note that in the minutes. I think we can let that one go. Okay.
No.
Any, okay. Once again, there'll be no decision rendered at this time. When we return to our corporate services meeting, we will address the recommendation from our planning staff. So thank you for that work, Ms. Smith. All right, clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that this public meeting adjourn at 5:09 PM.
All in favor? That's carried. So we return to our corporate services meeting. We are at item number 5.1, amendment zoning bylaw 2003-25 Plan 10 Park Part Lot 1 Municipality of Kincardine Hunter bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Prenger, that the amendment zoning bylaw 2003-25 Plan 10 Part Lot 1 Municipality of Kincardine Hunter bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-136.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. The Stewart bylaw amendment, please, clerk.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Rory Kavanagh, that the amendment to zoning bylaw 2003-25 concession 1 NDR lot 11 to 12 Stewart bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-137.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. So thank you for bringing forward those applications. We appreciate the impact that it will have, the positive impact that it'll have on our community. All right. In our agenda 6.1, there were 3 items from the consent agenda that were identified for discussion at our last meeting. And we'll have clerk read the motion, please. The first one.
This is moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Kincardine support the resolution from the Council of the Town of Petrolia of June 26, 2023, recommending amendments to the current regulations for licensed home-based childcare operators to increase allowable spaces, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Honorable Michael Parza, Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, MPP Lisa Thompson, MP Ben Lobb, and the municipalities of Ontario.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. 6.2, call for housing and protection of water resources motion.
Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Kincardine supports the Town of Parry Sound's resolution number 2023-087 dated June 20th, 23, and the Township of Archipelagos resolution of June 2023, responding to Ontario Bill 23 More Homes Built Faster Act, protecting our natural capital while addressing the housing crisis submitted to the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Prenger.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I brought this one forward because I think it's very important. It basically outlines that while affordable housing is still a main priority, we also recognize that there are other factors in play when considering those proposals for affordable housing, and we need to protect people and property from natural hazards and our health and our freshwater resources while planning those affordable housing projects. So this is a call for the government to not sort of just sweep all of that under the rug while we're trying to accommodate affordable housing and work together so that we can attain both. Thank you.
You've heard the motion. All in favor? And that's carried. 6.3, the right to repair movement motion.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Kincardine supports the town of Bradford West Willamberry's resolution 2023-199, passed on June 6, 2023, endorsing the right to repair movement.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Only if you put your hand up. Councillor Pranger, please.
Sure. We didn't talk about this one either at the last meeting, so I'll just discuss it real quick. The right to repair is a really simple protection measure for consumers. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of our technology is being designed so you can't repair it yourself. At least that's how it feels. I used to be able to repair simple things and I can't anymore. I know that. There are some people still specialized in certain skills and might be able to do it, but even I know our farming community has run into situations where some of the big farming equipment, you can't repair it yourself because it's all computerized. And this is sort of to try and fight against the intentional development of that type of technology. And so to support not only our everyday citizens, but also our agricultural community. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Maybe on the other end of the spectrum from farming equipment, I have a 2012 laptop from a certain manufacturer that I'm able to repair and keeps going on strong, replacing hard drive, touchpad, keyboard, et cetera, and stuff like that. This is something that 2 years forward from that, maybe 2014 or so, would no longer be the case. So I definitely agree that there should be an opportunity for a consumer not to get sucked into replacement by having the ability to repair where it's feasible.
All in favor? And that's carried. All right, we're into the consideration of bylaws, Kincardine procedural bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the municipality of Kincardine procedural bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-138.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Signed bylaw amendment. Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the signed bylaw amendment 8 bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-139.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 2023 consolidated rates and fees amendment. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pranger, that the 2023 consolidated rates and fees amendment 6 bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-140.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Move into committee of the whole. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion, return to council.
All in favor? And that's carried. All right, I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5:15 on August 14th. All right, roll call remains the same. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to the COW agenda? Seeing none, once again, I would ask you to disclose any pecuniary interest now or as it arises at the time of in the meeting. Adoption of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting. Clerk, please.
Moved by Roy Kavanagh, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on July 5th, 2023 be adopted as printed.
All in favor? That's carried. Are there any items for discussion from the council meeting? None? Okay. Delegations, none. Reports, infrastructure and development, Mystic Cove follow-up. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Roy Kavanagh, that council direct staff to amend bylaw number 2011-068 to permit the opening of Mystic Cove Gate from December 1st through February 28th annually. And further, that council repeal policy TP 3.1 emergency access to the Bruce Nuclear Power Development. And further, that council direct staff to no longer provide maintenance on Bruce Road 23 and let the existing agreement lapse.
Director Weiser, thank you for being here this evening. Are there any comments that you would like to make to begin this conversation this evening?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Craig. So a recap very briefly. So we came to council in July with a summary of our public consultation, sharing with you details over the past couple of reports, the premise of and the origin of the arrangement that's in place and the challenges that we see with that. So back in July, we presented council with a recommendation at that time, and still holding to that. We're suggesting that we open the gates from December 1st through February 28th. Over the last number of winter seasons, that has been the primary range of where we've incurred events that we've had to consider opening the gate. The purpose of that will allow people to still get through in a potentially safer environment, and would negate the need for us to deploy staff to make that gate function. In doing all of this, and back to the concerns we had with the arrangement with the agreement with Bruce Power, it would still enable them to get their traffic in and out of their workforce during periods when the road is open. Going forward, because of this, if council was to support this change, in our opinion, we would no longer require the agreement with Bruce County. That agreement is in place simply for the periods of when we are opening and operating the gate, when the roads are deemed closed, to allow people to get essentially from Lorne Beach to the town of Kincardine safely. That agreement has been in place for about a decade now and has been renewed on a 5-year term once previously in my term here. One thing I would like to point out to council, the bylaw that you will see on the agenda later this evening, we have made a slight modification to that. And so under item 4 within that bylaw, it currently it states as it will, but we've added the following wording. And so now the additional wording would state, or in the case of an emergency as determined by the Director of Infrastructure and Development or their delegate. And the purpose of that, if you review the bylaw, it currently states that staff are able to operate that gate, but at the direction of council. And so the way it was written currently in the draft that you'll see on the agenda, it states from December through February. However, in those periods of an emergency, we wouldn't actually have the ability to, at least by the bylaw, and we want it to be clear and transparent with that. So, thank you.
One question before we proceed. In the event that council determines to not support the staff recommendation, what's the outcome? We default back to the agreement we're at this point?
So through you, Mayor Craig, currently as we stand, we do have an active policy in place, and that policy would stay intact. The agreement with Bruce County has lapsed. So we're sitting here waiting for an outcome of this to understand if we need to renew that agreement. The county and municipal staff have had discussions since spring on that. And so if you elected to not proceed and the policy stayed in place, we would bring a report back in the next month recommending that we consider renewal of that agreement.
All right. I know this has been a subject that we have pondered and received much input on. I know that council has heard many options. it would be my strong recommendation that we do not drag this discussion out tonight. I would expect that it would be my preference that each council member be afforded the opportunity to express their opinion, any challenges that they see with either going ahead or forward or back. But we will afford a fulsome debate, but we're not going to go round and round and round in a circle. So Deputy Mayor, would you like to start our discussion this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. It's quite correct to say there's been a lot of input in relation to this situation and how we move forward. And I think what I have taken from this is clearly safety is paramount for the majority of us sitting at the table, if not all of us. And it's a very difficult balancing act as to how to ensure that the safety of those who are residents in the area are protected, but equally, certainly during the time of emergencies. And what I heard repeatedly from residents was absolutely in the time of emergencies, the gates should be open and there should be allowed access. The difficulty I have had in coming to determination is from a very logistic and practical sense, how would that work? And although I have come to the position that I'm not sure that there is going to be a perfect outcome, I certainly, at this point, am of the view that I'm willing to test the opening of the gate for a period of time during the winter to allow access, primarily because I've not heard to date really logistically how else we get out there in emergencies to open the gate if required without risking others' safety. So that's where I stand at the moment.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through your mayor. Normally I don't read what I've written, but it'd be easier this way. So I'm going to advocate for the recommendation as is, with monitoring in most cases to make sure that there aren't any unexpected or unacceptable outcomes of the policy decision made. In my choices, I'm primarily considering the residents of Inverhuron and providing a safer route than County Road 23 to and from town in the winter months. And my personal experience of that and a number of other people is County Road 23 from the S Bend north can be a hazard even when the road is technically open. My secondary consideration is workers traveling to and from the Bruce site who are considered essential staff and required to travel. Now, the employers on site, they have severe weather policies, they categorize employees, and generally they only ask the most essential ones to come to site to work when the weather is poor. And the others are instructed to stay at home. So that will somewhat limit numbers as well. Just a couple comments about the survey. There's a number of comments in the report that list comments that are against opening the gate with relate to impact on pedestrians, bikers, and hikers. I think that the recommendation eliminates or mitigate those by only opening the gate at this point in the winter. And there are also a number of comments that assume that the path to site via Lorne Beach and Upper Lorne Beach Road is a shortcut. This is not actually correct. I've timed it a couple of times on how long it takes to go from the intersection of County Road 23 and Lorne Beach to the intersection of Albert Street and Concession 2. It's 4 to 5 minutes longer to go down through Lorne Beach. That what this generally means is that even in the wintertime, unless the weather is poor, the choice for the quicker route is to stay on the B line. And this is a point I've validated through a number of people I know who drive this way regularly. They're not going to take that route if the B line is clear. So those are the points I'd like to make.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I appreciate that there's a lot of opinions on this for the people that live directly in that neighborhood who will be the heaviest impacted with whatever we see. And that regardless of what we decide to do tonight, I don't believe this is a final solution or a closed issue. It will be continued to be monitored and observed and discussed. And if things need to be tweaked, they will in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think the three councillors who just went took everything out of my mouth. It's exactly, yeah, I really can't say anything else. I was thinking all those things. safety is number one, but there's so many people that have different types of safety situations or safety issues in this situation. How do you weigh one against the other? I think that this might be the best option to protect everyone at the most needed times in different ways. And if it doesn't work, if we find that for some reason the traffic during the winter down that road, people are going off into the ditch and we can't get them out, then we revise and we adjust. Thank you.
Counselor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd just like to echo Councillor Pranger. I very much agree with the comments already made by my fellow councillors. What I would add is I do think this is a great compromise because I had significant concerns about winter travel with the drifting on 23. But I also took the time to drive the route with the bus driver who picks the kids up on that street and to see how visible it is going around the corners. There is major deficiencies trying to see around those corners. So I actually took the time to do that entire trail. And I can say that we did get passed by a motorcycle that was going through the gates using the bike access. So I actually do align with some of the concerns about the behaviors of drivers. And I think that that was what really made me take pause in this decision. And it's something that we as a municipality have to figure out how to deal with because it's not isolated to one road in our community. And it's something we have to get our arms around and understand, I think, why it's happening and try to get those parameters in place because it's a big concern. But I wanted to bring that up because this seemed like the right moment, but I am comfortable supporting this as well. Thank you.
Counselor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, I actually live at Invercarn, so this will impact me directly. This is a tough one. A lot of the neighbors have come to visit me quite often now, and this is going to be a tough one. I think that, you know, the recommendation by staff is a little too long. I would recommend even cutting out a month and go from December 15th to maybe February 15th. This will be a trial. I'm also prepared to monitor it because I'll be living there. And I'm also prepared to maybe lower the speed limit during this 2 months to 30. Maybe we have to put temporary speed bumps like we do on County Road 15. The only thing that really worked from speeding, we'll ask the OPP to monitor the situation. So, you know, what I'm saying from my fellow councillors is that this is a trial. I'm prepared to support a trial for 2 months and we'll shorten up the time frame. And we will monitor it. And I have no problems. If it's out of control, I'll put the padlocks on myself. Thank you.
Counselor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I have a couple of comments. So first of all, I would like to be clear that I would support a trial of this. So for 1 year. And as with any trial, I think it's really, really important to identify at the outset what kind of parameters and data we want to have in order to evaluate whether it's successful or not. So I'd like to also see in advance of this beginning some information on how we're going to gather some traffic data, potentially looking at speed limits, the number of times Bruce County Road 23 is closed inside and outside of the recommended timeframes, any other data that our infrastructure and development team feel is necessary or helpful for us to gather and assess this trial, including potential feedback from residents. I do have some concerns in terms of traversing, especially Victoria Street sightlines and the speed limit signs. They're quite often overgrown and there's a lot of blind curves with driveways. So I don't know whether there's an opportunity. I would certainly recommend that we look at increasing at least signage along that road in advance of this trial. The other is, I just want to make a comment, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, is so if we are to lapse the agreement to maintain Bruce County Road 23, it would be up to the county to determine where they're going to close Bruce County Road 23. So they may revert to the prior choice to close it at kind of the edge of town versus at the Lorne Beach intersection. So I just think that may impact whether or how much this actually gets used in the winter if the entire road is closed or not, because in many cases, if weather is bad, people should not be on the road at all. But if you are out and the road is bad, it's better to at least have a safer route home.
So if I can condense the comments, I think I heard a overwhelming theme of safety regarding the ultimate purpose for making any changes isn't to speed up the traffic to get them home sooner, but rather to make a safe and a safe journey from whether it's Inverhuron to Kincardine or from Bruce Power to Kincardine. I sit here with the challenge of we are implementing the policy and it's our staff that implements the operations. And we've heard a couple of councillors talk about sight lines, whether there's opportunity for management of any of those trees to maximize sight lines rather than whether there's opportunity to do a traffic count. That would be if that would be a meaningful exercise to gauge the traffic volume and or speeds. And we have our sergeant at arms down there. He'll be peering out from his cottage door every day. So I myself agree, do I agree 100% totally with the dates and everything about that? No, not exactly, but it is the right way to start. And as Councillor Steinhoff-Gray and others have said, we will address it. We will look at it. We're trying to make an improvement in our community. And not everything we do will be perfect, but we'll try. And that's what I am encouraged by council this evening. So we've had this conversation. The recommendation is, could you, Clerk, could you read the motion one more time?
And that council directs staff to amend bylaw 2011-068 to permit the opening of Mystic Cove Gate from December 1st through February 28th annually. And further that council repeal policy TP 3.1 emergency access to the Bruce Nuclear Power Development. And further that council directs staff to no longer provide maintenance on Bruce Road 23 and let the existing agreement lapse.
So you've heard Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. I'd like to make amendment to that motion. Can you put up the motion again, please? Thank you. Through you, the chair. I'd like to make amendment. It says from December 1st to February 28th. The amendment I would like to do is from December 15th to February 15th. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Deputy Mayor, so you're seconding that amendment? Discussion on the amendment? Councillor Stewart, please.
From my review, talking to the OPP and talking to Bruce County about the road being closed, we really do have that 2 months of concentrated snow. The rest, there might be the odd day or something. And really, some of those days you shouldn't. I really think for a test trial, I'd like to keep it really tight. I hope my other fellow councillors will agree with it. There is a huge amount of pushback to even open it. So I like to have sort of the impact as small as possible and get a maximum return. So that's why I decided to change from 3 months down to 2 months. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through your mayor. Well, I appreciate my colleague's sentiment here. There's already been some, in my perspective, some squeezing of the time frame to eliminate March, which can typically be an iffy period as well. And for the reasons I described earlier, I think that even if you pick December 1st to February 28th, it's almost self-regulating in a way. If the weather is good, that people won't take the longer path through. So I generally support the recommendation that was put forward.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Apologies.
I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
Yes, through you. I don't have anything to add to the amendment. I was going to mention because we had called.
Okay, so
Yep,
if it's
okay.
not about the amendment, then we'll leave that comment for following then, please. Thank you. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I know Councillor Stewart had said that he had discussions that informed him that there weren't that many cases outside of the revised timeline. I'm just wondering if our staff actually has those numbers and can we get them or no, you don't? Sorry, I will let you answer. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Craig, not prepared here this evening. We weren't requested that in advance, so
Okay, so we have an amendment proposed for the main motion that would shorten the time frame from down from December 15th to February 15th. All in favor of the amendment for the motion? Opposed? And that's defeated. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. I was just asked by a resident to have a recorded vote on this, so I'd like to do, so I would like to have a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, clerk, please. So once again, we'll do it in alphabetical order. We haven't gone to our new procedural bylaw yet, so we will. Sorry, Councillor Blackwell, you asked for it. You're gonna start anyway. So there we go.
Okay,
So the question, the response is either yes, obviously, or no. Yes, you support the recommendation. No, you don't.
Beth Blackwell,
Yes.
Rory Kavanagh,
Yes.
Andrea Clark,
Yes.
Mike Hinchberger,
Yes.
Jennifer Pranger,
Yes.
Amanda Steinhoff Gray,
Yes.
Bill Stewart,
No.
Kenneth Craig,
Yes.
and that passes. And that passes.
All right, so the recommendation from staff has passed. The gate will be opened on the 1st of December through to the 28th of February. Yeah. 29th of February next year. It's leap year, isn't it? Anyway, thank you to staff for the work that's gone into this. It has been an issue that remains, and as other members have said, it's not one that's going to go away, and it will come back to us, and we will look at it again, I'm sure. All right, next report is road allowance repair policy. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pranger, that committee of the whole recommend that council approve the road allowance repair policy as detailed in report operations 2023-16.
All right, are there any comments from our director of yeah, do you have any comments, Director?
Through you, Mayor Craig, the manager of operations is actually online virtually, so we'll turn it over to Corey if he has any comments here.
Mr.
Good
Boyce,
evening.
thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Just wondered if you had any comments to fill out the report. It was a good report to begin with. I just wondered if there was anything else you wanted to add.
Nothing much to add, just as it's stated there, it's the road allowance repair policy. A lot of times in the spring after our winter operations of the staff being diligent and clearing the roads and sidewalks, we do at times damage some sod with the blades of the plows. We do receive a significant number of calls in the spring to repair them. We just want to set out a standard procedure of how we go about that and how homeowners can request that service, and sets out a rough timeline of when these repairs will be completed.
Thank you. Were there any questions from council? Councillor Hinchberger, Blackwell, Stewart, and Pranger.
Thank you through your mayor. Thank you for the report, Corey. It's just a comment about how we execute this. I was thinking about more from the perspective of the public. Well, it looks good that you have a registry kept that works with say our internal systems. I really strongly suggest that we standardize the way in which members of the public come to the municipality for any issue, for instance, the report of concern process. And if there's not a way that simply that could be a pick within that, rather than was trying to imagine once this were to go into effect, how a member of the public would necessarily find how they would go about making such a request. When if we have one-stop shopping for concerns from members of the public, I think we should just pile on and use it for as many things as we can.
Mr. Voisin, is there a suggested avenue to make those requests from the public?
Through you, Mayor, that's certainly a good recommendation. Through our reporting service, we do have that capability that we can add this to that going forward. So certainly noted that we can add that to it.
Very good. Customer service is really important. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I was going to make a comment on that as well, so happy to see that. I just have a question about, is there sometimes in the road allowance, like the policy says that, fences, gardens, sprinkler systems, all that kind of stuff, is not the responsibility of the municipality. What happens if there is, say, telecom wires or other things within that right of way that are damaged? Would that be something that we would support for the repair of?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yes, we would look after those repairs, contact the appropriate utilities and so on.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Through you, as much as I like the public to beautify our road allowances, I think you're going into a very slippery slope here. Unfortunately, not everyone puts lawns right down to the road, but we have snowplow removal and sometimes we do damage, but I don't want to spend tax dollars fixing those things. Road allowances are designed and we have full control of road allowances. Maybe we should be asking the public, saying, before you do anything, maybe you should come and talk to us to see if it's okay. So we're not in this fight about cleaning lawns and fixing lawns and everything else. If the public decides to beautify their property right to the road, into the road allowance, they're going to have to take some responsibility and we might not be able to help them out. So I can't support this policy at all. I think it's a slippery slope. Thank you.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. I'm trying to picture where this would happen in town. I'm assuming it's obviously roads without curbs. Can you give me an example of which road this might happen on, a common occurrence?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The roads that don't have any curbing up against them, such as the old sections in town, like the north, I would call it the northeast section, areas in there where you come around the corner, and it's all basically the lawn comes right out to the road. Those areas that you come around the corner to remove the snow and shove it back on would be primarily the areas that we're looking at restoring.
If I might add to that comment, that's a good comment, Councillor Prenger. This also applies to the work that the sidewalk plows and snow blower would do, would it not?
Yes, that's correct. So boulevards up against or lawns that butt up against the sidewalk and boulevards on the roadside as well.
Councillor Stanoff, Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have one question and I apologize if it's already been asked. Wouldn't this just really apply to, like, I'm assuming lawn seed, like grass seed, to like help restore the grass that had been compromised? What is the actual cost as a municipality that it usually requires on average? Do you know?
That's a good question through you, Mayor. I don't know offhand. We do, with our new CityWorks platform, we can track that a little bit better. So it was implemented this year. We can keep track of next fall for a better understanding. A lot of the times it is just pulling the sod back after the winter thaw. It usually stays relatively live while it's frozen. So pulling it back on does fix a lot of the areas if the sod's still there, but there would be a little bit of topsoil costs and seed as well as labor to get it all restored properly.
So what I'm hearing is a policy that's brought forward to formalize the process that we do already. Councillor Hinchberger has rightly identified a process by which members of the public can ask for repairs to property that has been desodded, gouged, whatever, by a snowplow or whatever. It's not that there will be more or less properties. It's not your intent. Wow, we've got a neat process. Let's do a lot more so we can get more response. That's not the intent, but it's just a formalized procedure to to do what we're going to do anyway. Councillor Pranger, did you have another question? Okay.
Thank you through you, Chair. I'm just wondering how, is there's going to be any kind of scale or metric for deciding what's worth going out to fix and what's not? I mean, our staff's opinion of what needs fixing might be different than the homeowners. How do we decide? And if we're gonna go out there anyway, are we wasting time to go look at it? Should we just do it? I don't know. I'm really struggling with this one. I'm sorry. And the logistics of it and the necessity of it. As a property owner, I just assumed that it's my responsibility to fix those types of things. So this is a new concept for me. Thank you.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I think the intent of this policy is to make sure that everyone in the municipality receives the same treatment when something hypothetically could go wrong on their property. It's not who you know and who you can call to get the municipality out to repair something. This standardizes it and ensures that every paying member of our public has the same opportunity and process they would go through if they had an issue with their lawn.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thanks. I'm sorry. Is that through the chair? Are we now implying that there has been preferential treatment and things happening for some people, not for others? Because that's more concerning to me than this policy.
I don't suppose Councillor Kavanaugh was talking about preferential treatment, but there are people here that are new to our community who might receive some damage on the front of their lawn down by the road. And the question is, well, who do I call? So we don't want our senior staff like to be called. There's just a process through which our operations manager is contacted to do the work that they would do anyway. Councillor, Director, please.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Craig. One thing that I'd like to point out for council and to remind you of is that it's our frontline staff that are taking these calls generally and receiving the emails and receiving the requests to go perform these repairs. So this is giving them a tool in their toolbox to make sure they're providing a standardized approach out to the public. Without that, you can have 10 different people potentially on staff handling things in their own way. And so we want to provide consistency. I think, if I look at whether we have a policy or not, the last bullet in the policy is what the driver is for me. And what that does is it clearly defines what we're not responsible for. And those items that we're not responsible for are items that people have essentially placed on public road allowance illegally. And we're wanting to make them aware that unfortunately, when we were plowing, we have damaged your sprinkler system. However, it shouldn't have been there in the first place. And it's your responsibility to make that repair.
Councillor Steinoff, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Steinoff, great, go ahead.
Adam, I had one other question. I like the fact that it's a consistent approach. Using the new software, will it make it easier to bin locations so that if we go out to do repairs, we get all of them in the one neighborhood?
Mr. Voisin, do you have an answer for that one?
Yes, that's correct. It will make it in the, we will have it mapped in the vicinity of each block that we can certainly reduce the amount of man hours going out to several different areas back and forth. So that's correct.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. I think there's a good point here. The last bullet, damage to sprinkler system, fences, gardens, and other items in the right of way. Maybe we should get along with this. And if we're going to replace all this lawn, maybe we need to do encroachment agreements on this other stuff. I mean, this is the problem. These are right of ways. These are, road allowances. We have full control of these. I know the public's trying to beautify them, but where does it stop? Where does it start? So maybe we should start having encroachment agreements. And we'll have to ask the public to pay for their fences and their gardens that are on the public walkways or the public right of ways. And that might help about the gardening. I think the public needs to take some responsibility. When they're actually getting close to the road, there could be damages. So they should take a risk. It's a communication thing. If you want to grow grass there, we can't guarantee it's going to be there next spring. So once again, I'm totally against this, and I'll probably be making an amendment and a motion to start encroaching agreements on all these things that are getting into road allowances. Thank you.
Councillor Hinch, Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. Through your Mayor, it's just a clarifying question for me. Does the municipality have or not have a bylaw that requires private citizens to upkeep that part of the road allowance that, for instance, isn't paved, et cetera? So I would say from that perspective.
Excuse me,
sorry.
Director, did you answer that question? Could you direct a response to that, please?
Through you, Mayor Craig, I'm unsure if we do have a bylaw available.
So the point I think I was trying to make with that is that from a different perspective, you wheel around, these are private citizens who are on their property are doing us a bit of a favor. And on that ground, I don't think it's literally unreasonable that if we're coming to do sort of things related to the plows, that we might want to do a little scratching of each other's back in order to make amends.
There's a number of places in subdivisions in our community where the municipal ditches are well cut and maintained. And when you find the water line, it's way closer to the house. So there's your point is well taken. Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd like to, I just clarify, and I'm assuming I now understand is that our staff actually go out and do this already. This is something we already do. It's not something that we've noticed we've getting a lot of calls for. So we want to start doing it, which I did not understand that when I read the report. I thought it was implying that it's something we want to start doing. And so we need a policy to start doing it. So, so now that I understand that, and I will be honest, I actually thought we had a bylaw that required property owners to maintain that area between their property line and the road, probably because of previous other places I've lived, they do. So I just assumed that was a province-wide thing. I have been corrected and I understand better now. So those actually help. And I do agree with something that's been brought up, that last point about that our director talked about, the last point in the policy about damage to infrastructure that's been put on there by property owners that shouldn't be there. I'm glad that point's there, because without it, I couldn't support this. So thank you.
So we have a motion before us regarding the road allowance repair policy. All in favor of the recommendation to support this report? All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Safety measures, Highway 21 KTTPS update. Clerk, please. Yes.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the committee of the whole recommend that council direct staff to pursue a traffic study in the area of Highway 21 and KTTPS in 2023, and that the cost of the traffic study of approximately $5,000 be funded through the 2023 operating budget, and further that council direct staff to request a speed reduction on Highway 21 from south of Bruce Ave through to North Line Extension to the Ministry of Transportation and members of the Provincial Parliament.
Director, any comments?
Thanks, through you, Mayor Craig. The report, I think, summarizes things fairly well, but just real quick, I mean, the highlights from it, and I wanted to point out, I guess, for council and the public, we did receive direction in January from council, and staff have been persistent over that time. It took quite some time to get a response from the ministry. It's noted in the report that we didn't get that till the end of June of this year. In terms of a formal response. And so that did follow their assessment. So they did put a trailer camera out there for a 2-week period while school was still being attended. What they did is they assessed basically the road layout, the lane configuration, the existing signage, the paint markings, and the collision history of the road. Through all of that, they did note or did request some increased patrol from the OPP. Essentially, to break it down, what the MTO has come back to say to us is that you have a couple options. One is to apply for a community safety zone in that area. And they did state within that correspondence that they would support it. We have, in my time here, gone through that process in Tiverton, and it is It is a cumbersome application to put together. And so in doing so, the reason we've written the recommendation as we have is that we would like to perform a traffic study for two purposes. One, to understand if a left turn lane is warranted under that. So the review that MTO did, I'm not aware of what different elements we'll collect doing a traffic study versus what they collected through that video footage. However, the reason for the traffic study is that, in my opinion, we feel that based on sheer volume in terms of the amount of vehicles that are heading northbound trying to turn into the school, that would reduce the problem in general. The other component of it with doing the traffic study is that, and doing this in advance of a community safety zone application, that data would strengthen our application to the ministry. And so we would like to have that available to provide that within it. And then within the report, in the recommendation, the last point there that we've added is that we're suggesting to council to offer, give staff direction to go to our provincial member of parliament to lobby them to reconsider the speed and yeah, I guess really just the speed of travel of Highway 21 from the south limits of town, so essentially just south of Bruce Ave right through to the North Line extension. As Kincardine continues to grow and as we see development applications and opportunities, the problem's only going to increase. And there's been a number of accidents, and right now, or over the last number of years, and right now the MTO is looking at doing upgrades at Russell and Kincardine Ave that's going to add stoplights. And I just, from a personal perspective and at a staffing level perspective, can't understand why they want to have vehicles ramp up and down from stoplight to stoplight at 80 kilometers an hour. So I'm hoping that council can consider supporting that as well.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just have one general question. I am completely comfortable supporting the traffic study, but I just feel like with the accidents that have been brought before us and the letters that we've been given and the fact that we have the MTO support, I'm trying to understand why we wouldn't try to move forward anyways, getting this put through for the community safety zone. I don't mind supporting a study to strengthen our application, but I don't know why we wouldn't start that process, particularly as we move into another school year come September.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Craig. We certainly can. On our end, I guess I did say, the application is quite cumbersome. So if we started it now, hopefully we would have that traffic information data. One thing that I do anticipate, if council is to support this, I guess we're getting near September anyhow, but we would certainly want to collect that information when school has returned as well. So, but if council wanted to amend the direction, we could certainly take that route.
Certainly in support of your comments, the traffic patterns change on the first day of school. Like, it's an enormous change. It's busy now, but it's significantly different on the first day of school. Councillor Blackwell, please, and then Councillor Kavanaugh, I believe.
Yes, through you. I just really want to thank staff for all of their work on this. I recognize that sometimes things take a long time, and I appreciate that they've been really diligent and dedicated in seeing if they can get a response on this. I really appreciate the additional recommendation to actually look at a lowered speed limit all along Highway 21. I think kind of with the introduction of lights and general community comments around the fact that that's no longer realistically a bypass as it's getting built on both sides. The only question I guess I have is do we have an idea of how long the traffic study would take? You kind of mentioned how long the community safety application can take. So would the traffic study be a couple of weeks the way that the ministry did it, or would it be a bit of a longer period of time? And how long would it take us then to analyze the data after to make sense of it, to send it to the ministry?
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Craig. So assuming that we would be able to retain a consultant to do something, early September, I would expect that we wouldn't need to collect data for longer than, maybe a week to 2 weeks kind of period. So with a traffic study, when the MTO gets involved, they will give us or prepare a terms of reference that states you shall undertake a study that includes X, Y, and Z. So that would be the first step with them to receive basically that shopping list of everything we need to include. And then we would obtain or retain a consultant, but I would expect it to be a few weeks as soon as we get that report back from them. It wouldn't take that long to analyze that. So I may be wrong on this, but let's say hypothetically around a month to kind of work through that process. And then, hopefully through, September and then, and October, we'd be able to have an application ready to go to the ministry. So, over the next few months kind of thing.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I'd like to echo everyone else for thanking all the work that not only this staff, but everything that also our OPP officers have also put in with their focus patrols, trying to curb some of the speeding and issues there. I realize this takes time and it's a long process, but when everyone's done their discussion, I would like to make the amendment that we approve Councillor Steinhoff Gray's suggestion and also give you the go ahead and the empowerment for staff to begin the application for a community safety zone as well, leaving it in your hands to lay out the structure as you see fit for timing of the application with the traffic study.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, I know that there's been a problem with Highway 21, Highway 21 through Port Elgin, Southampton's almost a nightmare now. But maybe we need to do a study through Tiverton. Tiverton Highway has been a long-term safety problem, and maybe that's our next thing on the agenda. I just wanted to put that in as added. Thank you.
So a question to clerk, is there can we provide do we need an amendment to this proposed motion? Would you like an amendment, or can we do a second motion to that, or is that either way? So perhaps what we will do is with council's indulgence, we'll address the motion as it is here. And then if there is a desire from council to direct staff to begin the community safety zone application now in parallel with the traffic study to expedite it a little bit, we can address that. Is that appropriate with you, Councillor Kavanaugh?
That works well for me. Thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
I wasn't sure through you, Chair, if we were going to also address the comments by Bill. It seemed like there was a general appetite to have that traffic study at Tiverton. So if we could do a friendly amendment to approve funds for both the traffic study that's occurring in Kincardine by the school as well as Tiverton, or would that be a separate motion on another day? I'm amenable either way.
So I concur with your second thought. I acknowledge the safety challenges in the main intersection there in Tiverton, but it is really kind of catching our director off guard, and I didn't expect you were likely seeing that one coming tonight. But there is value there, but we would need just a little guidance from staff about exactly what the goal of that safety outcome is. Like we've got pretty specific outcomes identified for the stretch through Kincardine, but we would need to identify them through the village. So we have a original motion to recommend council direct staff to pursue a traffic study, cost of the traffic study to be funded from the operating budget, and direct staff to request a speed reduction on Highway 21 to the Ministry of Transportation and members of Provincial Parliament. All in favor of that motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Secondary to that, we have a move by Rory Kavanaugh that we direct staff to proceed with the community safety zone application in parallel with the traffic study. Is there anything in addition to that? Okay, we need a seconder for that motion by Councillor Steinhoff Gray. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Stewart, please.
I see those signs through you, Chair. I see those signs all over the communities. I'm really worried about how effective they are, unless they're like, signs are great. These policies are great. Do we get compliance with OPP? Because without somebody enforcing this stuff, it's just a sign on the road. So, you know, I'm a little skeptical. I like the signs. I see them in Tiverton, I see them in other communities. But unless we get an OPP commitment, without enforcement, it's just another sign on a pole. Sorry.
Counselor Kavanaugh, response to that, you're as the police service board rep, is there a comment that we can answer Counselor Stewart's concerns?
Through the chair, I would say that he's absolutely correct in that simply putting up a sign and not enforcing it doesn't have anything effective. People will always act the way the rules of the road are enforced, not the way that they're displayed. But putting up a sign that says the speed limit is now 40 and someone decides to go through there at 90, that's qualifies them as going 50 over and stunt driving, which is dangerous driving, which means an impounding of a vehicle. So you contrast that with as a possible consequence. And then now you have officers that would benefit greatly from a focused patrol in that area versus if you have someone who's going only 90, 10 over, right? Which we know is still dangerous in that area when the speed limit should be lower, just based on safety. So there is definitely a very positive effect for getting that set as a posted and recognized community safety zone. Thank you.
And some stories about, oh my gosh, I got caught out in front of the school going 90. Whoopsie, not doing that again. Counselor Blackwell, please, and then Counselor Steinhoff Gray.
Thank you. Through you, I was going to mention, both from the report and from my own experience in the mornings and the afternoons at the school, the OPP really did up their enforcement in that area. And I think the community safety zone, the benefit of it is certainly that it significantly, to the best of my knowledge, significantly increases fines. So it's no longer just, you know, you're caught over speeding in an 80 zone. It's now that there's significantly more penalty for doing so. And I think that that can be a deterrent as well. And I think that the OPP, as per the report, have committed to continuing to monitor that area as much as they can.
Counselor?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I was also echoing that typically with the community safety zone, there's increased fines, but something I've noticed that some of our city friends do a little better than us is they have signs posted that tell you what the increased fees are. So the monetary value associated with the action is very visible. So I don't know whether that helps. I'd like to think people do the right thing, but sometimes the consequence assists.
So we have a motion on the floor regarding the proceeding with the community safety zone application. All in favor? Is anyone opposed? And that's carried. Supply and delivery of various fuel products. Clerk, please.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that committee of the whole recommend that council award the supply and delivery of various fuels tender contract to the low bidder McDougall Energy Inc. as per report operations 2023-17.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. Through your mayor, I'd just like to recognize the positive impacts of joint tendering with the county and the municipality of Erin Elderslie. Something good to see. Thanks.
All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Award water meter proposal, environmental services. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pranger, that committee of the whole recommend that council accept the recommendation to award contract to KTI Limited with a total value of $507,500 for the replacement of water meters and associated equipment.
Hello, Mark, how are you this evening? Would you like to speak to this recommendation, or do you just want to answer any questions that are proposed?
I'm good either way.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, Mark, job well done. I just wanted to understand this financial implication. I'm getting a little confused here. We're talking about approving something for 507, correct? 507,000. And then you talk about the budget, which I know we did for 700,000. Are you taking the rest over and are we going to do something in Tiverton? Just help me understand that, please.
Sure, through you, Mayor Craig. So the budgetary number of $700,000 when we took the RFP out, Roxana suggested that we stick to what we had put in the proposal. therefore making sure that the tender process was fair, that we couldn't expand on the to the $700,000 limit, which would maybe compromise the request for proposal. So at this point, we're looking at adding the capital works to both the Kincardine Water Tower and the BEC Water Tower. There won't actually be anything go on the Tiverton Tower. The Tiverton Tower will be picked up by the BEC Tower. We'll also get Underwood, Scotts Point, and the Armo system. We're looking at replacing all of the meters on the Queen Street construction. And we also have ballpark 50 meters that are currently not functioning or broken that will also be replaced. So we'll be replacing around 700 water meters total.
Just to follow up, please, Mayor. So we are going to spend up to $700,000. So I'm a little confused. Help me out, Mark.
No, sorry. So through you, Mayor Craig, we will be spending the 507,000 total. That's excluding HST, and the balance will be either turned over for capital considerations next year or back to reserves.
Follow up, follow up.
Well, I'm thinking that, Mark, there's an opportunity since we budget $700,000 and it looks like we're gonna have year 2, year 3, year 4, because it looks like it's about 2.4 million. Is there anything, or can we approve a $200,000 increase and bring a little bit of work from next year into this year? You know, because it's already been budgeted. Sometimes in the past, we've taken advantage of this and the shortfall to continue on doing something. Is there anything, Mark, that you can offer the council and maybe have to come back next term or next meeting in September or even tonight? Thanks, Mark.
Through you, Mayor Craig, I'll jump in here. So that is certainly something that Mark brought forward after, you know, the group analyzed the RFP. Through discussions with Roxana, there were concerns about competitive procurement and our new procurement policy and potentially opening or exposing ourselves to, you know, some risk and liability with other vendors who did put a proposal in. And so the suggestion through her and through discussion with the lawyer that did help with the policy is that we should stick directly to the proposal as it was written and for the volume of meters. But point well taken. You know, there is certainly funds to leverage there, but council will see at the next budget deliberation, you know, a phase 2, and potentially it could be broken up into 2 additional phases, but we'll assess that in the fall and bring something back for, you know, a next consideration.
Thanks,
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious how hard it would be if we did decide to bring work forward, like Councillor Stewart's suggesting, to put out a separate bid. I understand we don't want to compromise the original scope, but have it as a separate segment.
Through you, Mayor Craig. I'm anticipating that we would have to come to council. Certainly would rely on a discussion with our CAO and Director of Finance, but I'm anticipating we'd have to come to council requesting, you know, funds for a new project. And then at that time, given that we've selected, you know, a vendor with a specific type of meter, we would be looking to sole source as well in that consideration. So, you know, if that was something that that our CAO and Director of Finance aligned with, and council had the desire and appetite to, we could look to do that later in the year.
Just as a question, you were speaking of sole sourcing there. Does the awarding of this contract lock us into a particular supplier, or are these water meters more widely available?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Craig. So the current tender doesn't lock us into the supplier of the water meters per se, but it does in a sense lock us into the infrastructure that we're going to install on the water towers. So to go to a different avenue of water meters, that equipment that is being installed on the towers there's a possibility it may not be compatible.
Councillor Stewart, you had another question?
Just really a follow-up. Since we made the procurement policy, we didn't realize that we handcuffed ourselves. So, you know, and it's a shame too, because we've always used this in the past when there was some savings to extend some asphalting, extend this. I think that I'll take this on to myself, but I think we might have to change the policy just to allow this to happen, because this is a very efficient way of us allowing to sort of jump into next year if there's a saving this year. So since we make the policy, we can change policy. So I'll take a look at it. Thanks.
I would happily refer you to our CAO who brings all our policies to us. I'm sure she'll be delighted to have that conversation. All right, so we have the ward water meter proposal. All in favor of the recommendation? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Holding removal bylaw, Keldon Development. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that committee of the whole recommend that the council of the municipality of Kincardine pass a bylaw for the removal of holding H provision from firstly Part Park Lot 2, Plan 10, Part 1, 3R 8384. Secondly, Part Park Lot 3, Plan 10, Parts 1, 2, and 3, 3R 10465, Municipality of Kincardine. Further, that it be conditional upon execution of a site plan that has been registered on title with Keldon Development, Inc.
You've heard the motion. Is there any questions? Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Sorry, if I'm reading here correctly, we're saying we're requesting to, or that we've been requested to remove the holding before the site plan agreement is registered on title, and yet our policy is to have that registered on title before we do remove the holding. So I'm just wondering how we are legally allowed to break our own rules. If you could explain that, thanks.
Through your Mayor Craig. So the way the report has been drafted isn't intended to break our rules that are in place. What this is doing is that in parallel to this, we weren't able to get the site plan agreement executed for this particular meeting this evening. However, we're quite close with the developer in finalizing those details. So rather than wait till September and get to the fall where we would bring all of that detail forward, we wanted to be able to have this in our back pocket. So that way, if the developer does bring us a signed site plan agreement that has been registered on title, a drainage easement agreement that has been registered on title, that we've checked the boxes within this. So within the recommendation, we've noted that this is conditional upon receiving those. So this is essentially council saying, yes, we approve this bylaw, but the mayor and clerk will not be signing it until we have the other elements completed and all the monies and securities in place.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure anyone listening or watching tonight understood that. Thanks.
So we have the motion before us. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Some other areas of responsibility, 7.2A HR policy updates, human resources. Clerk, please.
Moved by Rory Cavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that committee of the whole recommend that council approve HR 01 employment policy as presented, and further that they recommend that council approve HR 03 compensation and benefits policy as presented.
And I welcome Ms. Gowing to the staff table. Thank you for being here this evening. Are there any comments or clarifying remarks that you would like to offer council before we proceed with any questions?
Thank you. The municipality of Kincardine is committed to maintaining a transparent and equitable workplace where employees are treated fairly, consistently, respectfully, in alignment with employment legislation. It's within the best interest of the municipality to continually review and update policies when necessary to ensure that we're remaining relevant and align with workplace requirements. So historically, the municipality and its employees would negotiate a tripartite agreement, essentially a non-union collective agreement, which outlines employment benefits, compensation, and entitlements on an agreed upon schedule. In 2019, council approved a path forward, which would transition away from having a tripartite agreement at the conclusion of the 2019 to 2023 term, and instead create individual HR policies and HR operating procedures. And that is the path that we have been taking, and it aligns currently with best practice in the municipal sector. So this path forward was communicated to employees in 2019 at the time of the decision. And then the municipality has held staff meetings earlier this summer where we got to engage with staff and really talk to them about the impact of that, as well as to provide them with an overview of the proposed compensation and benefits policy that is up for approval this evening. The employment policy and the compensation and benefits policy are important policies as they really provide the framework and commitment from council with respect to these important aspects of employment. The implementation of the compensation and benefits policy will ensure that our employees continue to receive annual wage increases within specific parameters and in alignment with CPI, and a commitment to complete market and benefits reviews, as we want to ensure that we can maintain our compensation structure that is transparent, fair, and meets our statutory requirements. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to offer opportunity to our CAO to comment on this too, that certainly we respecting our employees through compensation and benefits is critical to the operation of of any municipality. So we want to do a good job of this, and Jeline would like to add to Ms. Gowing's comments, please.
So thank you very much, Ms. Gowing, for that summary of the report. I think that really helps. Council is aware that the tripartite agreement is what has been in place, and what the last round of what was negotiated into that was that it would end at the end of this year. So these are policies that help to replace that, along with other procedures and policies that have been coming forward over the past number of years. The tripartite agreement, just to be clear, has only applied to the staff that are full-time, part-time, casual, seasonal staff. It has not ever applied to the fire department. The fire department has an establishing and regulating bylaw, so it's referred to as an ENR bylaw. Within that, it deals with the compensation through a similar process of negotiation. So through our discussions with staff, which we really did appreciate having the opportunity to chat with staff and hear back from the staff that are both on the fire department and staff that are not in the fire department. And I think that the main thing that is included in Ms. Gowing's report is that staff really want to make sure that they still have a voice, and what they appreciated about the past process has been having an ability to raise concerns. So we have spoken with them, provided opportunity for further discussion, as well as how we can do that moving forward. The main concerns we had from staff outside of the fire department were mainly around understanding how a policy that includes CPI would work, what happens when there's big fluctuations in the market. But you'll see from the draft policy that we have a min and a max associated with that, to try to even things out and smooth things out, so that's not a challenge for either the employees nor for the taxpayer. So it's an attempt to be balanced, and it's a similar process that you would see in other municipalities. Additionally, I think what we have offered to staff is we want to hear from you on a regular basis. So they may not have been aware that there is an annual cycle of review with our benefits provider to get an update of where the market is, what kind of benefits are being used by our employees, what are not, whether or not there's opportunities for improvements and changes. So I think opening that up to that conversation with their supervisor, with HR, with myself, has been something that we offered to say, this is one of the ways that we think that we can address this with you. On a secondary level, we also reached out to the fire chief to get his advice about, whether or not this would be a similar process that the fire department would be interested in, as they typically have wanted to be aligned with the same type of approach that is happening with the rest of the employees within the organization. His recommendation was to set up a meeting with the officers of the fire department. So we had that meeting with myself, the Director of Community Services, and our Manager of HR to get their feedback and input on what our process was affecting the rest of the employees, and how that might be received by the fire department. Their recommendation, they provided us some suggestions on the type of information that firefighters might be looking for. So we held that meeting and had that conversation to let them know that this is what was happening, when it was happening, how it transpired over the course of from 2019 till now, and to get their feedback and input on whether or not this is something they would be interested in as well, given what I noted earlier, which was that typically they have wanted to have a similar process. I would say from that meeting, the general comments and that we had was their preference was to be able to continue to have a voice, but we also offered them, all of them, to be able to reach out to myself, the Manager of Human Resources, and the Director of Community Services, and the Fire Chief, to be able to share any other thoughts they had. That's the status of where that's at. So it's a separate process. These are, just wanted to make sure council understood that these are not the same issues, because there's two different policies essentially with employees as volunteer firefighters versus the rest of the employee group.
So just to clarify, the conversation this evening, Ms. Gowing, is directly at municipal employees excluding fire departments.
That is correct.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So section 2 scope of the compensation and benefits policy says this policy applies to all full-time, part-time, contract, and casual employees. What you're telling me is that although it doesn't say it, it should say this policy does not apply to volunteer firefighters. Is that correct?
It could through you.
No, I'm
Mayor.
saying that's what I heard you say, but
Yes.
it does not apply.
Correct.
So maybe we should just put this in. This policy does not apply to volunteer firefighters. There is an establishing and regulating bylaw that there is a separate process that exists for volunteer firefighters, and that quite possibly the events of the last 24 hours are entirely a result of a misunderstanding and miscommunication.
Yes.
Okay, well,
It could be just to clarify the issue, as you have commented, the scope of the policy that we're discussing tonight does not include volunteer firefighters within our municipality.
make one change.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
No, you mean Pranger?
Oh, Hinchberger. Well, no, well, I'm sure you were putting your hand up again, Councillor Pranger. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to comment on Councillor Hinchberger's comment. Generally, I would think we'd put that as number 3 would, section 3 would be changed to exclusions or exceptions, and it'd be just a brief thing. And if the firefighters were to decide that they wanted to be a part of this policy, we would just amend it and take that exclusion out in the future. Super simple.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, I'd rather go back to the HR policy. I was reading about it. It said the CPI, we're going to measure everything towards CPI. If CPI is 10, we only go a maximum of 4%. That's correct. If it's -10, we actually increase by 1%. So they have a band of 4 to 1. As you're well aware of, our labor cost in the municipality is about 1/3 of our expenses. This is a major expense for us. This is probably what the council really needs to focus on, because I like happy employees, and don't get me wrong, I like happy employees, but I really do like happy taxpayers, and they're the ones who vote for us, and that's the one we have to focus on, because we're really responsible to the taxpayers. Hold on, you can say whatever you want, Mike, at the end. So what I'm trying to understand is that if we have a 4% increase, It also says the proposed annual wage increase will be based on 12-month CPI and will be approved by council in advance. So what are you saying to us? Are you telling us that if CPI is 3.5, we're approving the 3.5, or do we have a challenge to say, no, we're only going to approve 3? Because, you know, if you're just going to put a policy that says CPI, we don't have any approval authority at all. So I don't understand exactly what's going on. Plus, I also want to understand this is only one part of an increase, and this is the CPI. So this goes right across the board to everyone, except for the fire department folks. What happens with the step ups? We have a lot of this grading. How much is our step ups in the last 3 years? Is it 100,000? Is it 300,000? Is 400,000? You know, what do we usually approve between, you know, grading people and step ups and everything else? How much is that worth to us on an annual basis? Do you have that figure with you tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not have that figure with me tonight. We do have, so with any cost or increase, whether it was previously negotiated or if it's a cost of living increase, we have statutory or an equitable grid that meets statutory requirements, in which case job rate, which is the top step, would be indexed by the percentage. And then there is a formula that creates the steps underneath it based on a specific percentage outlined in our procedures. I don't have the amount that it has been, the total cost of it over the last year, over the last couple of years for you. To answer your first question regarding the cost of living increase. So we have made it such that we're going to go July to July. It's a rolling average CPI. And as prior to the budget process starting, I believe the director of finance will bring you a report to indicate this is the amount of CPI. We will be proposing whatever it is within that 1 to 4 maximum. However, as council has the direction of anything or on whatever we do with the municipality, you have the ability to decide not to go that route, but that will be what we are proposing.
Please.
In a moment, CAO to respond to that, please.
Sure, just to follow up through you, Chair. The rationale of going from July to July was intended to help inform the budget process so that we could then bring that report to council in August to say this is what the CPI is and get confirmation from council on an annual basis prior to the budget being proposed as to what the CPI increase would actually be. So as the manager has stated, it's up to council. The policy really does help establish a clear framework of the expectation. But if council were to choose in a given year to do something other, it's council's policy, they can make a change.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification, please, if I may, what is the CPI range window for council? Just in.
So that is a great question because it is in the remuneration policy is my understanding. So CPI is what is increased for council, but it hasn't been what has happened for staff. The range, I don't think there has been a range. It's gone up by whatever it is CPI has been.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I was certainly going to make a similar point to Councillor Kavanaugh. I think that whatever the range that we eventually determine for staff should be the similar range for the leaders of the organization as well.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, there's a couple other things that sort of bother me. I wouldn't mind that kick-up figure for the last 3 years because I know it's significant. It's just not basically a wage increase, but it's also, I call it a step up. You know, you've been here for 5 years, you get an increase and everything else. So if you could give me that for the last 3 years and provide the council, that's great. The other thing is that in the
just a minute before you go farther, Bill, that's a good question. I agree with the request, but the is it possible for you to come in and like sit down with Ms. Gowing or our CAO, because just to say, give me the step up, like, I'm not sure if you can provide the grid that says this and this. If that is a public document, okay, that's one thing, but it might be a more sensitive conversation than that. So I would just like to get some input from staff, whether or not we can actually accommodate what that request is, just to be productive here. Is there a way that we can fulfill Councillor Stewart's request in that regard, or is there what can council be circulated in that regard, if you would, please?
So the grid is public. Yep, the grid is a public document. There has been certainly confirmation of this and with respect to protection of privacy and freedom of information. So we aren't allowed to share who's getting what as an individual, but as the position, we can provide the range. So that's something that was circulated to all staff. The entire grid has been shared in the past. I think if I'm understanding the question, so I don't know if it's just the percentage differential between each step and job rate that Councillor Stewart is looking for, or if it's how much have we increased staffing costs, because those are two different things, and it's perhaps a little bit difficult to go back 3 years to compare to the positions within the organization, because they've changed. So we don't have the same positions. We've adjusted.
Yeah, with the organizational review. I'm sorry to have interrupted you. Go ahead. You had more in your question, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I noticed in the body, it talks about annual economic cost of living increases are enabling the wage grid to keep pace with inflation in our geographic area. Let's be careful of that. We're in a very funny area. We have this Bruce Power that really inflates a lot of things. I would like to say that should be changed instead of our geographical area, why don't we call it the Ontario province? If you're too concentrated in a small area like this, and we're very artificially creating a very high inflation actually with Bruce Power in here too. So can we change that wording instead of geographical area to Ontario, province of Ontario?
CAO, please.
I will ask the manager perhaps to weigh in on this as well, but through you, Mayor, my understanding, this is intended to mean within our geographical area as a comparator for municipalities. It's not directly a comparison with industry in our region.
Okay, so we have Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
I just had one other question because it was something that I thought of when looking at compensation. And is there a separate policy for expenses when staff have to like purchase equipment and such that are like personalized that would be covered through a different policy? I know this doesn't apply to the firemen, but they had talked about the cost of their boots and other items. So I was just curious if our own staff have similar situations and if there's a separate policy for that sort of thing.
Thank you. Through you. Yes, we do have something like a boot allowance for all municipal staff as well as for the fire department in terms of replacement and timing of that. And Ms. Gowing could probably speak more to the specifics around it, but it is one of the questions with staff not in the fire department either that ask, how do we know that we're keeping pace with that? And that was a great question. So if we're not, then we should increase it so that it is keeping pace. Usually what happens is with your staff that require safety boots, especially when they're the outside workers, they kind of buy a summer pair and then a winter pair, and that every other year type of a process, and then replace them on that cycle. And if the market is such that, the $250 isn't enough, then we should look at replacing that with a higher figure that reflects what's actually the cost of safety boots.
So is the employment compensation and benefits policy as presented, is it a once again, a geographical comparator area that's used to provide those numbers for both the benefits, whether they are municipally provided or externally provided?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we, as part of the policy, we have included a market review, which happens every 4 years. Not only would we look at comparators, they are municipal comparators, depending on a variety of factors. We pick a group of them. We will do a benefits review at that point too, but similar to what I'll just reiterate what Jill said. If there are specific expenses or specific elements or perks or things that our employees are interested in seeing an increase or just want to be addressed, we again are encouraging our staff and to have open conversation with their director or the senior leadership team, because through moving away from the tripartite agreement to HR policy and then having HR operating procedures underneath them, where you would find such things like a food allowance, we have greater flexibility in order to be able to adapt as the world of work changes. And so we can have those conversations on the fly versus having to wait 4 years in order to kind of negotiate them again.
So we have a motion on the floor that we're going to address. We're going to have a motion on the floor that we're going to address. The Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve HR 01 employment policy as amended. And further, that they recommend Council approve HR 03 compensation benefits policy as presented.
No, it's the other way around. The compensation benefits policy as amended.
Compensation and benefits policy as amended. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Ms. Gowing, CAO, good information. So we'll finish off this information report, then we'll take a 5-minute break and then we can come back for the closeout. Okay. Information reports, environmental services compliance report and Birchwood report. And there for information, Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I had one quick question about the wastewater bypass because of the power interruption. Did that behave the way we expected it to? I know it took about 2.5 hours for us to identify, and I thought we had some works in place to kind of mitigate that. So I just wouldn't mind an update on that. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Craig. Through the capital budget this year, the Mahood generator station is scheduled to get an on-site generator. The delivery of that generator, I think, was passed, I'm going to say 7 to 8 weeks ago, with a 14 to 16 week delivery for the generator. So it should be here in the fall. There was a power outage. We ran on one phase. We did not meet our E. coli limit we just don't have the treatment through one phase of the UV system. Once that generator is installed, you shouldn't see any more of these.
Okay, thank you, Manager. Excellent work. Clerk, last motion.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by by Mike Kinchberger. That this council adjourn, or pardon me, this committee of the whole adjourn at 6:45 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay. 5-minute recess. We'll be back at 10 to 7. All right, so we're back into our corporate services meeting and we address matters arising from committee of the whole. 9.1 is the Mystic Cove follow-up. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the road dedication Upper Lauren Beach Road Amendment bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-141.
Heard the motion, all in favor? Oh, any discussion?
I just want to know, I know that we recorded inside the committee of the whole. Don't we have to record, or can I request to record?
Can request.
I'll request to record, please.
Counselor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Counselor Clark,
Yes.
pardon me, Deputy Mayor Clark, Counselor Hinchberger,
Yes.
Counselor Pranger,
Yes.
Counselor Steinhoff Gray,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart,
No.
Mayor Craig,
Yes.
and that's carried. Moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that council repeal resolution 01-25-17-04, read policy TP 3.1, emergency access to Bruce Nuclear Power Development. And further, that council direct staff to no longer provide maintenance on Bruce Road 23 and let the existing agreement with Bruce County lapse.
My question is, why is there two different resolutions here? Two different motions about Mystic Cove, where there was only one coming out of committee of the whole. Why is there two here? That's my question.
Thanks. Can I explain?
Someone please explain.
Okay, so the first one is the actual road dedication. So in the road dedication, it actually says when the road will be open or closed. So that's what we're doing in the first one. The second one is removing the policy that we had, which was emergency access to Bruce Power Nuclear Development. So we're actually repealing that bylaw where we would do that. And then the third one is to direct staff not to update that agreement. So although there was one in committee of the whole, because of everything we needed to change, there was two here. Because one's a bylaw.
So all those stipulations are here, but it was in the committee of the whole, but it was just broken apart to address two specific different issues in corporate services. Okay, so the motion is that we repeal resolution and direct staff to no longer provide maintenance. So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Pranger.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Sorry, can it go up again on the screen? Thank you, please. Through you, Chair. I'm wondering, okay, and I think it was partially addressed when we talked about this earlier, but I'm not fully understanding, so some clarity would be great. Outside of the dates where we're opening, what about emergency access for Bruce Power then? Do we, without this agreement, do we provide it at all? We don't, it's just nothing? And my second question would be, no, can I have a second question and we address that first? Just to keep
Let's
things
address
clear?
the first question.
Thank you.
In the event that the gates are closed on the 14th of March and there's a big snowstorm, what is staff's proposal, how to address that?
Through you, Mayor Craig. If we moved forward as is, the agreement would be abolished and we would no longer open the gate other than for those 3 months, or if an emergency vehicle such as EMS requested to get through there. So for Bruce Power, we would no longer have a standing arrangement with them.
Councillor Pranger?
So a follow-up to that, can we not have both? Can we have this new policy and an agreement with Bruce Power so that that stipulates outside of those dates, we maintain that agreement to do that for them?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So if we go back a couple reports actually on this, that was, I would say, probably one of the components of the origin of bringing it to council. There are holes and concerns with that policy. The OPP is not supportive of it. Essentially, the OPP's suggestion to us is that you need to make a decision. The road is open for everybody or it's closed for everyone. And so that drove us coming here. I recognize the dynamic of Bruce Power and, you know, the need to maintain traffic flow, but essentially, if I was to be able to kind of regurgitate what's in that report, to break it down, we have concerns with the policy as is, and either that policy needs to be completely revamped to see if we can, you know, be comfortable with something or rescind it completely.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just want to make one more clarification, Adam, just so that I'm not confused based on Beth's comments. We did have a clause in there that if yourself or whoever's acting as yourself have the ability to declare an emergency so they can open it, do we need an agreement with the county at that point so that the access to 23 happens, excluding Bruce Power, like from the discussion, just period? Because Beth made a good point based on where they set up that closure point. How usable that is. So do we still need some type of agreement, maybe not the same as what we had?
So through you, Mayor Craig, they're actually with each of the lower tiers in the county. There is a maintenance agreement that would allow us to still perform under an emergency scenario. This year specifically for the purpose of that agreement was really negated by the direct policy with Bruce Power. So to answer your question, if there is an emergency and if Bruce County couldn't get a plow here, they would work with us through the winter months, and we would, you know, we would maintain that section of road to get an ambulance or fires truck or something like that through.
All right, so we have the resolution before us regarding emergency access and no longer providing Bruce maintenance on Bruce 23. Councillor Blackwell.
Sorry, thank you. Just again, at a request of a citizen, is it possible for that first resolution to be a recorded vote? Thank you.
The first one was the road dedication was. Yes, you did. You were not here. Would you? So the all in favor of the second motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Road allowance repair policy bylaw.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the road allowance repair policy bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-142.
You've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Safety measures, Highway 21 K2TPS. This is the original one. The additional motion will be presented at the end of our corporate service agenda. We have not forgotten it. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the council direct staff to pursue a traffic study in the area of Highway 21 and KTTPS in 2023, and that the cost of the traffic study of approximately $5,000 be funded through the 2023 operating budget. And further, that council direct staff to request a speed reduction on Highway 21 from south of Bruce Ave through to the North Line extension to the Ministry of Transportation and members of provincial parliament.
So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Supply and delivery fuel tender bylaw, please.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the award, supply, and delivery of various fuel tender bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-143.
So you've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Award water meter replacement bylaw.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the award RFP 029534 water meter replacement bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-144.
You've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Amendment to zoning bylaw, holding removal Keldon bylaw.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the amendment to the zoning bylaw number 2003-25, holding remover Keldon bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2023-145.
So you've heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Employment policy bylaw.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the employment policy bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2023-146.
So you've heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Compensation benefits policy bylaw.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the compensation and benefits policy bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2023-147.
You've heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And the community safety zone bylaw.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that staff be directed to apply for a community safety zone for Highway 21 at KTTPS in parallel with the traffic study.
Heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Council general announcements. Councillor Hinchberger.
I have nothing to add tonight, Your Honor.
Councillor Pranger. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, just wanted to say thank you very much to the local Lions. We had a very successful Special Olympics bocce ball tournament on Saturday, and I don't know what happened. The weather was saying threatening, and it turned out to be a gorgeous day, so we had a full commitment. It was a fun day for all, so thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I wanted to thank all the coaches and participants of minor sports, including the deputy mayor, who's a soccer coach, for an absolutely wonderful season. I do also want to recognize our first responders and community members who were a part of the incident on this weekend, and my thoughts are with all of them.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Not at this time.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I have two community events that everyone should be aware of coming up on Saturday, August 26th. We have the Gathering of the Bands, which will be at Victoria Park from noon to 9 p.m. and admission is free. So come on out and listen to that. And then on the same day of the 26th is also our Marine Heritage Day. So come on down to the shores of Lake Huron and have some fun. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Clark.
No announcements.
Just a couple for myself. There was. Okay. Just a couple for myself. There was the front doors are sticky. The latch is sticky. And staff has alerted myself and through myself to you that if you happen to be here after hours or something, when you're leaving the doors, please check them, just give them a little push, just to make sure that they're locked, that's all. Just a announcement about the council meetings upcoming. I personally am enthused about the opportunity we have to discuss the land use policies of our municipality at a special meeting on the 11th of September. I think it is the first of many, many conversations that we will have in our term that will help set direction for the municipality for the next 50 years. And I extend that invitation to any of yourselves, and I'm reaching out to some community members as well to gather input as best I can to help play my part in those discussions. And interestingly enough, we don't have another regular council meeting until the second Wednesday in September. Right? Please help me out. Don't leave me hanging here. 13th of September is our regular meeting. The meeting dates change from Monday to Wednesdays to provide for better opportunity for staff and council to be as well informed as we can to make decisions.
That's a month away.
CAO, please carry on.
Want me to carry on? Okay, so just as an update, we put in some requests for delegations at the upcoming AMO conference in London. And we received approval for only 2. So I think we may provide a question for perhaps the mayor to go stand in line and be one of the lucky selected individuals to ask a question at the Ministers Forum. the Bear Pit, yes, affectionately known as the Bear Pit. But we have a delegation with OMAFRA to talk with them about a pilot project that we think would be beneficial. So it's not really a request to them, just a request that they support what it is that we will be attempting to do, which I really see as something that has a general circular benefit to our region, in that we're providing some notification to individuals on drains, as the Drainage Act is the responsibility of the Minister of Ag and Food, about the potential for them to be a part of the ALUS program, which many of you will know, if you don't know already, about ALUS, ALUS, the alternative land use systems, where there can be funding for primarily agricultural property owners to potentially take land out of production that might be better served overall for the crop production as well as drainage, to use it in a different way to naturalize it. So it's an interesting project, because we also have seen that there's a fair amount of funding that's coming in from Bruce Power for that system in our region as part of their carbon offsetting goals. So I think that's a neat opportunity. I don't even remember all of the titles with the MHL. This is not Ministry of Long-Term Care. It's labor and trades and skills development. So speaking with them about some of the community initiatives that perhaps aren't directly council's mandate, but something that's community partners are interested in working with, to make sure that we have as much opportunity to provide young people with the ability to build skills for the things that are needed in our region. So it's beyond just one industry, but certainly we know that there's a skilled trades shortage, and we need to do what we can to help promote and support that as well. So talking with them about that, but otherwise it'll be a really great conference, so that we get to meet with others and have chats and listen to plenary speakers and various sessions. I'm looking forward to attending that with some of you.
We have a closed session planned for this evening, so we have the clerk read the motion to move into closed session.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that council move into closed meeting for the purpose of considering litigation or potential litigation, including matter before administrative tribunals, a legal matter pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion.
All in favor? And that's carried.
We got a couple of